Greetings. I am Hasiem Ayali Kimbui. I'm a full professor at the Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University. And today I want to talk about a topic. The following topic does need to be talked about. In approaching the topic and today's discussion, I want to be very careful of how I approach the following topic, yet be truthful. Now, let me take a step back a moment. The topic that I will be talking about is not a follow up topic to a video I did a couple of days ago concerning race and intelligence, and which I also plan to do a follow up video, which is in the works. However, this topic is related to the well, let me say it's related to that. It's related in a way, whereas I have some personal friends and colleagues that have chosen to use the word Africa, however, spell it with the letter K, and with various reasonings as for why. For example, I understand that, and I'll say it in this way, I understand that in African culture, that some African ethnic groups utilize the K to spell and or to spell Africa. I should say spell and pronounce Africa. Granted, what I've heard mainly suggests that traditional African languages utilize C as I just mentioned when they spell their sounds. You see, African languages are tonal languages, right? And thus spelling their sounds, the letter C, more so than the letter K, plays a significant role, or more so, the letter C plays a significant role in both spelling and pronunciation. I say to the spelling of Africa with the letter K and the previous example and other varied rationales that it also says something about whether or not those individuals who utilize the spelling of Africa with K really know the history of why the spelling of Africa with the letter K was chosen and used for in the first place. Moreover, this got me to think about something that I read and or even perhaps heard regarding uh, the late Dr. Amos Wilson, where he he made reference to how we often miss connections in history and the African social reality. And in me talking about the topic and providing the example and sharing what I just shared, what is discussed here and linked is an analysis of African history relatable to really strengthening our African culture, consciousness, personality, and intelligence. Now, those who insist on spelling Africa with K, or with the letter K, I should say, should study the history of Africa and the historical perspective on the trade, let's say, the trade and diplomacy that came in violent conflict, culminating in the very existence of what we recognize today as European colonization. In what concerns Africa and Africans overcoming the negative situation that exists, is to know that this occurred in all parts of the continent, including the southernmost part of the continent and what is known primarily as South Africa. The extent of this European colonization among various African environments and people and their languages uh, is evidenced, of course, by the development of, the development and use of major ports around the continent, which also for many African peoples include the selling and the buying of what I refer to as our intelligence of Africans for the economic purposes of the colonizers. So this colonization that occurs and that occurred in South Africa functioned as racial apartheid, which was carried out by the Dutch, who used their language known as Afrikaans. Uh, and so, with that information, I call into question the use of the term Africa and the subsequent spelling represented by the letter K. Doing so it does not focus anymore on the needs pertaining to our African humanity. Now, the way I see the situation is equally or similarly applies to the use of the N word, whereas the N word is a racial and ethnic derogatory term used to dehumanize us. And in a similar fashion as with the change of the spelling of Africa with a K, many sought to change the spelling of the N word relatable to how we use it in a certain way, right? Very similarly. So in that way, it follows how, for example, how we spell it and how we pronounce it as to mean or as to represent a friendly word towards others in our lives. And then, two, another observation that I noted with that is that to a greater degree, we even call into question who can or cannot even use it as a result. The word is the word, and what it represents. It is the ultimate derogatory term um, for an African person. Period. Regardless whether uh, another African person, white person, Asian, Native American, or whomever uses it. And personally, if you know someone that uses the word, I would be very careful around him or her. Uh, um, and so, in effect, we have to be mindful of we have to be mindful of that. We have to think ahead rather than short-term thinking of responding too quickly. So sitting our minds on that, guided by the spelling of Africa with K, does not fulfill our needs. And what connects us with the rest of the world, to be honest. Um, that is why I or that is why, given the topic and the discussion, I and I lost my train of thought. Uh, well, let me say this. Given the discussion in the spirit of turning to Africa and choosing to respond, I am not responding, or I should say, I want us to respond with intellect. Yeah. And also setting up our ability, setting up reasoning, uh, open to change as well. Um, with this, or should I say, in doing so, does not mean the exact duplication of what was there before, i.e., in terms of African traditional culture, but considering productive growth. As so, I recognize that as information becomes available, that information, I should say, as information becomes available, I process that information to see again how it's functional for African humanity. And so that is what I wanted to say around the topic of Africa and those who choose to spell Africa with the letter K. I am going to again continue my second part of another video dealing with race and intelligence. However, I wanted to put this out. I was going to talk about it later. I was going to talk about it at another time. However, uh, something told me to go ahead and put this video out, so I'm going to put this video out ahead of the second part of sharing my thoughts about race and intelligence. Thank you.